there, welcome to the Do What Matters podcast. I'm your host Shannon, and today I want to talk about a feeling many of us know well, falling behind in life. I think it's easy to find ourselves scrolling through social media and see our friends or even strangers achieving milestones that we can only dream of. Like buying a house, getting promotion, traveling the world, that all of a sudden your own progress, your own life feels inadequate in comparison. But here's the truth, there's no such thing as falling behind in life. And I'll explain why by going over 5 eye-opening reasons behind this perception, and most importantly, how to turn it to your advantage. Let's get into it. Okay, so reason number 1 is that you're probably making upward comparisons. In psychology, there's a theory called the social comparison theory, which suggests that people value their personal and social worth by assessing how they compare to others. Now, there are 2 main types of social comparison. There's upwards and then there's downwards. Now, upwards comparison is when we compare ourselves with those who we perceive as better or superior to us, while downward comparison is when we look at those who seem to have less. Now, when we compare ourselves to someone who appears to be worse off, we often create a sense of superiority in things like our abilities or current status, which can boost our self-esteem. But as you can imagine, when we compare ourselves to someone who seems to be better off, it can make us feel inadequate and behind in life. But again, here's the thing, a lot of what you see when you look up is just an illusion. Something that looks so enticing is usually carefully curated. Many people use tools and structures that make their lives look far more impressive than they really are. For instance, say you and your old classmate from school both went to university and landed a similar job. You both worked in that job, in that role for like 5 years. But your old classmate seems to be better off than you. A better car, a bigger house, a promotion, more money. In this way, comparing yourself to them can make you feel like they have everything that you want. And you might start to think that you're falling behind in life because you haven't achieved the same. But what you don't see is that they might have substantial credit card debt, or they may hate their job because they're always working over and they don't have time for their friends and family. You don't know what is going on behind closed doors, and simply comparing yourself to their achievements won't do you any benefits. The truth is, we're all on different paths, right? We are unique. We have our own challenges and opportunities. So instead of feeling pressured by these comparisons, you can use them as inspiration and motivation for your own growth. And this is called benign envy, and it can be very impactful in your life. For instance, rather than thinking that you're behind in life, you can shift your focus and use the comparison as a tool for personal development. It can guide you on a path of what's possible in life and motivate you to work towards goals that are bigger than yourself. Now, the second reason is that you probably don't know what you want. Often when we find ourselves comparing our achievements and progress to others and feel like we're falling behind, it's because we haven't figured out what we truly want. So let me give you an example here, right? So about 4 years ago, I felt really stuck and dissatisfied with my life. And on the surface, everything seemed to be going well. I had recently moved from the Netherlands to Australia to finally be with my now wife after 1.5 years of doing long distance. And at the same time, I accepted a research position at one of the major universities. Like, this was my first job as a researcher. However, after a while, I just felt so unhappy and I was just completely lost. Like, I had set my sights on advancing in academia, and the next kind of step after finishing my master's was a PhD. But I quickly discovered that this path was more challenging than anticipated because of the differences between the Netherlands and Australia. And at the same time, COVID-19 struck. The country locked down, borders closed, and suddenly I felt so isolated and like on this big island, I just felt stuck, unhappy, and wasn't making any progress in my career. So I felt like I was falling behind. But this sense of unease and discontent eventually pushed me to look inwards and ask myself some difficult questions. Like, what do I actually want from life? Where do I see myself in 5 years? And what are my long-term goals and aspirations? Like, answering these questions helped me discover what I truly want out of life and even chart a new path for my life. So knowing what you value and what you want out of life is incredibly important, because if you don't align these two things and what truly makes you happy, you're always going to feel like there's something missing and that you're lagging behind because you're pursuing something that others want, but not what you want. So you might find that you have joy in experiences like travel, investing in personal growth, or maybe you like the idea of actually starting your own business, or you might find fulfillment in taking care of your family and helping others in need. Like, it can be truly anything as long as it aligns with what you value, like what your values are and what you know, like what you want out of life. Because at the end of the day, you might not have everything that your peers do, but you have what you generally value, and that's far more fulfilling. Reason number 3, you let your emotions control you. When you feel like you're falling behind in life, it's natural to want to catch up with others. You see where people around you are and you envision yourself there too. However, often the steps that we need to take are not the ones that we want to take or the ones we think will actually help us. For instance, imagine wanting to be more social, but you're struggling with social anxiety. You know that to become more social, you should attend events and meet, for instance, new people. Yet your mind tells you that that won't work, especially not for someone as socially awkward as you, and you would just embarrass yourself like you've done in the past. So rather than actually going to the event, you opt to stay home and watch Netflix. So what's happening here is that your mind is actually sabotaging you by generating reasons why you shouldn't try. And it convinces you that attending social events will lead to rejection and embarrassment. It will tell you things like, don't go to that social event because no one will like you. Like, what are you going to talk about anyway? You don't have anything interesting to talk about, and you're just embarrass yourself. You see this type of reasoning all the time in political arguments or trolls on the internet. And it doesn't matter how logic you are and all the evidence you present with them. They have plenty of logic to refute your logic. And this is the real problem, right? Where people get tripped up, because when you have a logical reason to not do something, why bother trying to overcome them? But the moment your brain urges you to not do something, your emotions are controlling you. And when your emotions control your thoughts, logical thinking takes a backseat, leading to decisions based on fiction or fear rather than facts. So the key to breaking this cycle is acknowledging the emotional components and then addressing it. Like, recognize the underlying emotions, which is often rooted, as I said, like feelings of like fear or perhaps shame, and then decompress these emotions through techniques like you can use like mindfulness or self-reflection, journaling. And then because you do that, you get a better understanding of the origins of your anxieties. About, for instance, the social situations, and then shifting your focus from who you think you are to who you want to become. And this shift is pivotal because many people remain stuck for years, that thwarted by their own self-sabotage that is driven by ego and emotions. But by overcoming these internal barriers, you can actually align your actions with your aspirations, moving you ultimately closer to where you want to be in life. Reason number 4, you are chained to internal expectations. The one that I think most of us millennials are struggling with is being chained to our internal expectations. Internal expectations are what we expect from ourselves. They are our wishes and our desires. And when our expectations of how our life is supposed to be going are met, we feel happy. But the reverse is also true. When our expectations of how our life's supposed to be going are unmet, we feel unhappy. And these expectations are often based on societal norms and parental influences, and as well our own aspirations. Like growing up, many of us were influenced by a previous generation's blueprint for success, where milestones like, for instance, marriages, home ownership, and stable careers were achieved earlier in life. For instance, imagine you're in your early 30s like I am, and throughout your life, you've been told that attending university would secure your dream job and then paving the way to financial stability and happiness ultimately. But now in reality, it looks completely different. Like you're struggling to afford a home. Like literally the market is so bad that you can't afford one. And you're unhappy with your job. Like the happiness that they promised you in pursuing like a degree and then leading to a job is not there. And then you definitely haven't reached this end stage because of all of that in happiness. So in reality, societal shifts and economic realities and changes in cultural norms have reshaped these kind of timelines, right? And creating these unrealistic expectations of where you should be in life. And because we've been told that this is the path to happiness, we've gotten ourselves kind of chained to these internal expectations. But as it is with life, it rarely follows a linear path. And although times have changed and it's so much harder to hit these milestones in today's world, it's essential to reframe these expectations realistically. Because at the end of the day, each person's journey is unique, shaped by their individual circumstances and opportunities and as well choices. And comparing your progress to others or to an idealized timeline actually only breeds unhappiness. So instead of viewing setbacks as failures, consider them as chapters in your personal narrative that contributes to your growth and resilience. And finally, reason number 5, you are not learning. I already touched on this briefly, but when you compare yourself upwards, you can either make yourself feel like you're behind in life and envy that person in a malicious way, or you can learn from them by using something that's called benign envy. Now, benign envy is a way for people to invest more effort to be as successful as the other person. So instead of asking yourself, why does this person make more money than me? Or why is this person doing better than me? You should ask yourself, how are they actually achieving this? So turning this question from why to how turns your envy into curiosity and growth. Because often we think that others have it all figured out, right? Especially when they seem to be wealthier, happier, or more successful. And it's so easy to believe that they are just lucky or have advantages that we don't. But when you look into their story, like when you actually look into it or ask them how they got there, they'll find that they often have worked really hard to get there and they failed over and over again before finally finding that one thing that worked for them. Like before I started making content online, I always got sucked into doom scrolling, right? Just mindlessly scrolling over Instagram. And this was just making me feel really shit. Like I was making comparisons of like, why is my life not as good as theirs? All I was seeing were all these people who were so happy and successful that my life was nothing in comparison. And although I was well aware that people simply post like the positive things in their lives, I couldn't help but still feel bad about my own life. But when I kind of changed my way of thinking and asked myself, what are these people doing that I'm not? How can I learn from them rather than envy them in a way that is making me feel bad? And when I started doing that, I started to grow and spend less time actually doom scrolling. And this is why I think everyone should actually be rather like a creator on social media rather than a consumer. Okay, so those were the 5 reasons why it's impossible to fall behind in life and how to turn it into your advantage. And if you find this useful, please share it with someone who might be feeling like they're falling behind in life and just need a little reminder on how to let go of that feeling. And also make sure to follow me so you don't miss out on new episodes. I'm your host, Jenna van der Kruk, and this was the Do What Matters podcast. I hope to see you next week.